Muska Andar heter jag och med mig har jag Dr. Suman Khanna Agarwal som har rest hit ända från Indien. Och det är Sofielunds Folkets hus som har bjudit hit henne. Vi ska låta henne berätta lite om sig själv. Hi Suman, it's a pleasure to have you here, and you have traveled here all the way from India. And you're a very well-known person, but many of our viewers might now not know anything about you. So would you please give a presentation of yourself?
Well, I'm a professor of philosophy in Delhi University. I have a PhD in Gandhian philosophy, so I'm a Gandhian scholar. Plus, I've done some postdoctoral research projects in India, in Sweden, in Canada. I've written some books on Gandhi and written a lot in some journals, articles in journals, and also lectured a lot on Gandhian philosophy abroad. Normally, I teach a course on Gandhi in the summer semesters in Canada or American universities or European.
Is that your first visit here to Sweden, or have you been here before?
Actually, I first came to Sweden in 1986 on a research project to study Gandhi's relevance to the peace movement in Scandinavia. So I was here for a year and a half, and ever since then, every October, Delhi University, we have an October autumn break from 1st to 15th October. So I'm normally back here to give some lectures in different forums with the peace groups or the university or even gymnasiums, wherever they, or folk high schools. So I think I must have been a Swede in my last life because it's almost 20 years now since I come to Sweden in October. Mm-hmm.
So the 2nd October is a big day. Can you tell us a bit more about it?
Yeah, October 2nd is Gandhi's birth anniversary. And last year it was declared the International Day for Non-Violence by the United Nations. So for Gandhian scholars and Gandhians and for all people who are working for peace and non-violence, it's a very significant day. Mm-hmm.
So what does it mean for people abroad, like in Europe? What kind of response do they show on the 2nd October?
Well, I think people remember the Gandhian legacy. And I think it's very empowering to remember Gandhi because he used non-violence in politics. So that is the beauty of Gandhi, the sheer integrity of the man. Because what was right in his personal life was also right in politics. And that's the greatness of Gandhi, that he showed us how to apply non-violence in politics. In other words, non-violence works in politics too. So I think October 2nd really would remind us how we can also successfully use non-violence in politics.
How long have you been working with questions regarding non-violence?
Ever since I did my PhD really, but now I'm working with one main question, and that is how to apply Gandhi's philosophy today. Gandhi is of course relevant in many spheres of life, but the most important place he's relevant is to Gandhi's legacy. I would say, if you can sum it up in one word, and that is non-violent conflict resolution. And today, all of us, all the adults living in democracies, we have politically legitimized violence as a means of conflict resolution, and we are very passionate about this. The global military expenditure is $2 million a minute. That means we are using $2 million every minute to teach how to use violence to resolve conflict. But we are not even spending $1 a minute teaching how to use non-violence to resolve conflict. So how can we expect it to succeed?
Yes. So how do you think people can work different countries to prevent violence and to work in a way which is more justice and more non-violent?
I think the need of the hour is that if we want to move forward as in the global village or as a society, as nations or in the world, is that we need to politically legitimize non-violence as a means of conflict resolution. So my Gandhian NGO, we have launched an international initiative for the political legitimization of non-violent conflict resolution through the introduction of non-violent defense in world systems, in military defense systems worldwide.
So what does this campaign mean? What does it mean?
We have 3 demands from all the governments all around the world and the United Nations. The first of these demands is that we urge everybody that without abandoning the present military defense, a non-violent defense be instituted in all the defense systems. What this means is that right now, like every country has a defense ministry, Ministry of Defense. So we keep that, but along with the Ministry of Defense, every country starts a non-violence defense ministry or a peace ministry. And at the grassroots level, every country has a non-violence training, a military academy. Yes. Like you have West Point in the States. And of course, Sweden also has the military academies where you train how to go to war. Yes. Now, we keep that, but alongside that, every country, we are asking them to start a non-violence academy. And there's a blueprint of what will be taught there. Very briefly, there is 198 non-violent methods or tactics which will be taught. Then there's the history of non-violence. There are 24 cases from history which will be taught here. And in fact, in India, we have approached the Ministry of Education to put all these, to add a chapter in history books. Yes. Because history is not just war, it's also non-violence. Then non-violent communication will be taught, how we speak wolf and how to speak the giraffe language. Then the philosophy of non-violence, because let's say that Christians believe in the 10 commandments, and 2 of them is thou shalt not kill, or thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. So what does this mean? How to translate this into political reality? And then we also want that every student after gymnasium all over the world would go to the Non-Violence Academy and study for 3 months, non-violent conflict resolution. As you know that we had, there was compulsory military service for 2 years in many parts of the world. So if we can have compulsory military service, why not compulsory 3 months non-violence training for a change?
Yes.